The darndest thing.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, I say we go ahead and get started, and those that jump in will get in. And we are recording this, and so I want to welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about investors, builders, and developers, and anything else topical that we decide to take a jaunt to. Today on our panel, we've got the amazing Brian Stoltzfus, David Doris, and Paul Ruff. Super thankful for them. Let's give them a quick Zoom hand. And I'd like to maybe if you each could give a 2 to 3 minute snapshot of just your history in the business for those that are new on here, and what a bit of your experience and exposure to working with investor, builders, and developers. Stoltzfus, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, Teddy. Thanks for having us, everybody. Glad to be here, and I'll do my best to act like we know what we're talking about this morning. I think most folks I recognize the names on here, but I got started at Village, I don't know, I guess in the early 2000s, 2000.
'02, '03, somewhere in there.
Yeah, somewhere in that zone. So that was sort of stated income loans, 100% financing world, which I didn't know any better. I was 24 and killing it, and just thought it was the easiest, best job I'd ever had in my whole life. And then the rug got pulled out from underneath us after that. But specifically for this topic today, started out, really got excited about developments and what Village was doing then, sort of leading the charge. I remember thinking they just had the coolest listings, and they were doing those developments, downtowns like Crest Lofts, Art Ave Lofts, Worthen, things like that. And I just got super interested in that. Ended up working with a guy named Jim Caden, a friend of David and I's, and he sort of connected us with a project called the Rhythm at Music Row. This is pre-recession time, and got linked up with Mark on that. I didn't really know what I was doing. Mark was the go-to guy for that kind of thing at the time. And so we started working on that, sold through most of those units in a pretty good economic environment, and then was tasked with closing them out in a not so great economic time. So I spent a lot of time on that one, selling the project and then selling it again, kind of when it came time to get people to close. So kind of cut my teeth on that project, and from there just kind of went on to be in that world for the most part, for better or for worse, various teams, and cultivating those relationships along the way. Fast forward to, I guess, about a year and a half ago, David and I and Hunter and Aaron and Zach kind of linked up and had an opportunity to come back to Village, and so here now. And David and I have done a number of projects over the years, which we'll get into, I'm sure, a little bit this morning. But I got my start, basically what I wanted to highlight is that I got my start on a sales team at Rhythm back in the day. So kind of went from there.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll talk about that, because that was a great experience. Probably hard for a first one, but of going through a market shift in the middle of selling a big development. So, and when Nashville was still new in that game a bit. So, David, Doris, give us a bit of your experience or exposure in new construction or investor, builder, and developer.
I started about the same time Brian did, printing off tax returns over in warehouses off Nolensville Road. Things were good. And then, I'd sold a couple projects, the Glen, and did a apartment conversion in Westchester, and then Weston Station, which was like a cottage development over in Sylvan Park, Sylvan Heights, and then got on the Rhythm with Brian, and everything kind of changed then. So it was the same. I was like, this is the greatest, easiest job in the world. Everything's just flying off the shelves. And all those projects that I'd pre-sold, the Glen had to sell again. And Weston Station, as they were kind of selling as you built. So that one was kind of happening along the way, but, and then sold Worthen, and Art Avenue lofts. And so cut my teeth also on projects. Just at one time I had 3 cell phones. Now you can have Google numbers, but just answering different phones. And yeah, and then kind of same path all along the way here. Been at Village the whole time.
Nice, love it. Brian, I thought it was going to have a DT there when you started talking Westchester and some of those old names, the Glen. It's like, Mr. Ruff, how about you? Tell us a bit.
Well, I think what I'll be able to help with with this topic is a little bit more on the side of getting started. I'm much newer into the development side, but I started out about 4 years ago, kind of working towards building relationships with builders and more just working on the HPR side of creating those relationships, and just kind of learning as I went. And it's been a great experience. And along with that came with that, it was zeroing in really heavy on the Charlotte Park area. And with that came the opportunity just recently to become a part of the Beckany team, which is what I've been really working towards the whole time, was to work my way up to a bigger project like that. So I think I'll be able to help a little bit on getting your feet into this side of the business and developing those relationships and working your way towards some bigger projects and along those lines.
I love it. Awesome. Well, let's just kick off a bit here of just some of the basics for, again, those that might be getting started in this. What's the difference in a builder and developer? Who wants to kick that off?
So for those that don't know that, and if you'd be surprised, Teddy, or maybe not, but I mean, it does get confused, especially with clients where they just sort of think they're talking about the builder or complaining about something or have a question for somebody. And it's like, they're not connected. A lot of times people think it's the same. So these multifamily stuff that we do a lot in, typically you'll have the developer who's sort of, the mastermind or whatever, kind of sort of the conductor of the orchestra. And then you've got, they hire a builder, which is a separate company, typically with the job of the task of building the project. I guess there's some examples where that can be the same. Like David does some stuff with a group called White Pines. That's like not like a big.
I feel like a lot of the HPR stuff, the builder and the developer are the same person. They buy the lot, they build the 2 houses. But when you get into the bigger stuff, it's 2 different people. So the developer is developing the land and on the land, has the vision for where it's going to go, gets everything approved, and then goes out and gets bids, just like you go out and interview real estate agents and they pick their builder.
Excellent. Yeah, I just think it's an important distinction that everybody sort of forgets. The investor, you might be just thinking, oh, somebody that wants to buy a rental property. Not necessarily true, right? Tell us like what the investor role is typically in this, in a build like that, where their role is different how their role is different than the developer.
So it depends on, again, on the HPR stuff. I mean, sometimes those guys have an investor or something, but we're never dealing with that person usually. Same with in the multifamily stuff. You're not really dealing with the investors. The developer is going out and raising that capital, and in turn then, going and getting the bank loan and doing the deal. That's kind of the developer's world. And the builder's world is just building what they've been tasked to build, and our job is selling the product. Investors are also what you're talking about, where they're buying investment properties, or what maybe even they would want to buy a piece where you could do 2, and then they hire a builder to do it. I mean, that could happen as an investor, but most of the builders that I'm working with, we would identify, or they would identify the land, buy it, and then build the 2 on it. And then on the multifamily side, like I said, it's just a different group. I don't even know the investors in a lot of those projects.
Excellent. Yeah, and sometimes it's the same person, everyone. So, right, a builder like White Pines, they are the investor, right? They are the builder and they are the developer in that instance. But they could also be acting in one of those roles in a different project. They may just be the investor. They may just be the developer. They may just be hired to do a build. So knowing the terms, I think, is important where I start off with. So appreciate you sharing on that. If anyone has questions as we go through there, this is an open forum and panel, so put those in the chat. What benefits have you experienced? We'll start off on the good, right? What benefits have you experienced working with investors, builders, and developers?
So I would say for me, the biggest benefit, I mean, for better or for worse, it's just how my business has kind of grown over the years. But to me, I like having, maybe 5 or 6 clients or key relationships that cultivate lots and lots of business, lots and lots of closings. So I don't have to necessarily all the time, meeting people, generating new listings. You sort of like, I can cultivate one really good developer relationship where we get along with each other. We like working with each other, and that one relationship could produce hundreds and hundreds of closings over the course of, many years. And so, to me, that's a benefit. It takes a while to get the other side of that coin is that that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time to build that trust and to do some deals, and it's a lot of grinding to kind of get to that point. But I see that as the biggest benefit for me, is just having 6, 7 really important clients, and then just dealing with them as opposed to hundreds of different clients.
Yeah, Paul.
Yes.
What about you? Any benefits that you've experienced or things that you appreciate about working with this clientele?
Yes, and like Brian said, it is it's a grind to build these relationships, and it is kind of having your mindset on that it's the long play. There's not really a whole. It's not about getting quick closes and all of that. It's about planting some seeds, working deals, creating trust. Letting them know that you can be trusted to make good decisions on their behalf. And so with that comes, a multitude of deals that if you can continue to work at it. And that's a good feeling to know that when you get a lot for someone, in my aspect of doing the HPRs, when you get a lot secured, doesn't guarantee that you get the 2 builds on the back end, but it is good to know that there's the great probability that you'll have two listings, in 6 to 8 months, and continuing to do that and to come through to give them the comps of what your projected sales price is going to be, and to be able to follow through on that is really helpful, and that's where you can really continue to build on that, and that they're going to stay active, and so you work at it, and that's the payoff.
Excellent. And I think there's also just some fun challenge in there, David. I know for you, it's almost, it can be maybe a little bit of a sport. Like you're a pro at this, and I think it can become more interesting after you've exhausted, just churning buyers and sellers and doing the same thing. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, it's
for sure the pro part.
Right.
Say
yeah,
true.
yeah,
That's true.
For sure that. No, I think that's also where I think we're going here with it. But I mean, that's also the downside to it, is you have a lot invested in a couple relationships. And so you really have to take care of them, and you have a lot invested in, 100 closings sounds great, but it's also all coming from one place, and you have to really pay attention and work for that. If it goes away, it's a really big deal, where if you lose one listing, it's maybe not, you can move on, be glad you lost it or whatever.
Yeah, and we are going to come to that. So it's great transition here. So I want to hit on client acquisition. People that want to start getting into this, right? Like, so how do you recommend an agent build connections with investors, builders, or developers? Where would you say somebody that isn't doing this type of work, where should they start? How should they start?
So I think, Paul, why don't you take a stab at that since.
Yeah. Well, for instance, I know a ton about Charlotte Park. I really doubled down on that area. I looked at at this time, which was about four years ago, I guess, that there wasn't a whole lot of new development in that area, but I looked at the, kind of the zoning and all that. So I spent a lot of time just in the area, but I saw where some buildings were, some construction was happening, and some of those guys will put their signs out. So it's just calling signs and visiting job sites, walking through new construction, finding out who the builder is, who the developer is, and just putting, getting out there and stepping into that realm, and just finding and then just taking them to lunch, whatever, just kind of figuring out what they're looking to do in the future, kind of, just feeling that out and seeing where you can be of service to them, and creating that. And then when you start getting opportunities for land or a lot or whatever, just sending it to them and letting, getting in their inbox, seeing that you're active and that you are putting it out there. I've picked up an investor or developer from doing an open house, and he came in and just had the conversation with him. He gave me his card. I called him. We went to lunch, and I ended up selling about 10 new homes for him. So it's really just about getting yourself out there and putting yourself in the market.
I love that. So true. It's like immersion. The best way to start if you want to work with people, start knowing what those people are like and doing, right? So you don't just go, oh, I want to work with FSBOs. Well, you better really immerse yourself in that before you even go after it. So Paul, you've done a great job in that. And I appreciate you sharing that, because it, even just working open houses, even being available. I know, Brian, like some of you got started by just getting on a sales team. Well, I can't get on the sales team. Well, then work an open house for them. Just be at an open house for them. Just listen to it. Get all the materials and review the floor plans and ask questions and all the things.
Yeah, but
right?
pretty soon you'll just be on the sales team if you do that. I mean, that's how it goes. You're just, all of a sudden, you're just like doing it,
Right.
Yeah. As my mother would say, the number one rule, show up. Just show up.
Mm-hmm.
That's the magic. Like, that's the beauty of this business is it doesn't take much. You just show up and you're going to beat 60% of the audience just to start.
Right. So
AKA answer your phone. David, anything else about that as far as recommending where to start, or do you feel like that covers it?
I think that covers it. Just, try and be helpful, add value. Don't be afraid to fail.
Love that. And adding value for these people, they need dirt. So like, that's where we're going to come to property acquisition here. We talked about suggestions for getting involved to be skilled in the work with this group. So again, surrounding yourself with those people. All right, representation. Any special considerations you have in representing this group of people? They can be a different bunch. So what would you say would be, and I'll put this to David, what considerations should someone have before they get into this thinking it's just another client?
Yeah, it's again, it's relationship building and adding value to the project to where they need you kind of. I mean, I don't get listing agreements signed on this stuff usually till later in the game, because it's not worth it. The developer doesn't really want to sign it. You're in this process of feeling each other out and getting the pricing right. And so I think it's just keep giving on that stuff. When you're giving your knowledge, I mean, we had a project recently where we were constantly giving on it, and then somebody else got in the ring and kind of almost got it. But I think the developer realized that the value was being added all along by us. And so they stayed with us. And for a minute, it was like, we should have got the listing agreement signed. We had opportunities to kind of get it signed. But at the end of the day, if they don't want to work with you, they're just going to figure out a way to get out of it. It's not really worth the lifespan of these things are so long that they'll just be able to wait it out and then go with somebody else. And
the idea is to form a deep enough relationship that there is no other choice. They wouldn't even imagine working with anybody, like doing a good job. And like David's saying, adding value the whole way along. It's a little different than the old days. I think there was some thinking where you kind of get a meeting set up with a developer or whatever, and you're coming in with this big dog and pony show with, oh, look at me and all the things. And, it's like kind of the opposite approach is what where we found the most success, is really just listening, understanding what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and then kind of coming back through in a thoughtful way that services and highlights the things that they're after, as opposed to selling them on, whatever we've done.
All
Yeah,
the stuff we've talked about, like we keep talking about it, but it's abundance mindset too. When you find something, and Paul, you can speak to it on the Beckany deal. Brian and I had it on Silo. Like I had Silo, and then brought Brian in because we needed to kind of add to that, and then we built our team around that. You have to get the help you need on stuff. So if you try and put a whole deal together and not share any of it, then there's going to be a group that's going to kind of beat you to the punch because they're going to have more tools. And finding somebody who's done a project before or understands, if you think you come across something, can be a big time saver too, because you may kind of found fool's gold and it could be nothing, and just move on and don't waste your time on it. A lot of these projects, it's really exciting to think you get a $40 million project and you start counting that, 1, 2 in commissions, and you're never going to get paid it if it's a $30 million project, but you're telling the guy it's 40. When it's 30, somebody else will have it and they'll make that 900,000. So.
Right, exactly. How do you ever handle, like, let's say, you start working with them in the development stage, right? Or you help them acquire the land, and from the time, like a Silo deal, from this time you started that till the time the first closing, what does that look like?
There was an article in the paper, remember?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's probably 2.5 years, 3 years maybe.
Yeah.
I'm never really kind of sure.
Yeah, but the first year we didn't know if we were getting it or not. It went a couple different places, and then it came back, and then it was probably 2 years from the point that we knew we had the project to getting a paycheck.
And that would be obviously a bigger project with someone that has a lot more experience. I mean, that's a lot of units and complexity to it, and certainly involved a lot of city approvals and zonings and things. It's not just like buying a piece of dirt that's zoned for 2 and putting 2 HPRs on it, which, obviously is still a form of that. But do you, in paperwork or considerations, should people be mindful of putting extended agreements? Have you ever done listing agreements that are, 2 years or have extensions, or you really just, it's not about the paperwork, is it?
No, because like David said, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if somebody doesn't want to work with you, it's not going to feel good trying to force them anyway with like a piece of paper, right? It's just like,
yeah.
I mean, we have to have these things in the file, right? It's not like we're renegades out there, being, whatever, but it's not really, it's, by the time you get to that phase of it, you've already laid the groundwork for a long relationship.
And there's an appropriate time to, like, we need this, and this is part of the process to sign this thing. But if you're jumping to get that thing signed before you've really done any work, it just doesn't feel good. It feels, it's a telltale sign to me that.
It doesn't feel good to the agents. If you're doing that, that sucks. You're like, it's awkward, because it is awkward. Like, it's not, it feels that way because it's not right.
Yeah.
It's definitely more of a relationship, right? It is different than being hired to sell one home. I mean, it is, if you all can't trust each other without paper, it's probably not going to last, even if they quote unquote hire you, because if you're in each other's pockets and a team, or if you're just kind of a hired and they're not in love with you.
A good time to kind of get it signed, if you're looking for that spot, is when you start spending money, like real money, on marketing.
Great.
I think that's a time where it's like, hey, I'm about to, it's a way to break the ice and have that conversation. It's like, I'm about to, get this billboard, or we're about to print off a bunch of stuff, not just, a little bit. You're spending your time on the front end, which is valuable, but when you really start stroking those checks is when it's time to, like, shore up the agreement, make sure everybody's good with what you're getting paid.
Absolutely. Speaking about marketing, to that is just who pays?
So every deal is a little different. For like the Silo example, if we're looking at that one, we took care of the marketing expenses for that. For a massive project like a 1212, that's a $1 million+ marketing budget. We participated in a percentage of that. And we were able to structure that deal in a way that allowed us, basically in that project, the developer, we had an agreement in place for whatever. I think we were responsible for 20 or 25% of the marketing budget in that example. And we set it up to where the developer paid those bills, but it was kept, accounting records were kept of it. And then once closings commenced and we had money coming in, then we prepaid our obligation up to that point. And then going forward, we paid our share, monthly or whatever. So that's a little different situation just because it's, 300 units.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I'm certainly not wanting y'all to disclose any particulars per se, but that helps. I think people to have some reference. I mean, if you didn't know, 1212 is over $1 million in marketing. It is a monster budget, $1 million, folks. I mean, they have been doing print ads in the most expensive local pubs for well before this thing goes vertical. And so it's a much bigger animal than I think some people have concept. And it can take some really deep pockets. And David makes a great point. It is in a very appropriate time before money starts going out that they can understand, hey, we want to have some paper to it, just, if it goes that way. Hey, Paul, when you're acquiring it, you've helped people find land, right? Or you've brought land to builders. How do you protect yourself when sharing this land with a new potential builder that they aren't going to go buy it direct or use someone else?
I don't really have a way to do it other than just having a solid relationship where, they know, I mean, there's not a real way. I mean, it is really just a matter of laying the groundwork, being someone they can trust. I don't take a bunch of money on the front end. I really let them know that I'm not trying to make I don't want to make a bunch of money on the front end. I'm trying to pave a way for them to make as much as possible. Let's get it secured, let's get it under contract, and I'll be ready to sell it when you're done. So that's really just it. For me, it's the long play. It's about getting the two builds at the end. It's about the end game and making sure that they know that I'm not. It's not all about me. It's about making sure that they're taken care of, and I think that's what's helped me a ton in the past is creating that good relationship. But especially whenever I'm helping the homeowner for a tear down or whatever, I don't just try to get that deal under contracts. I've done several deals where I've found homes for them to move to from their homes. So, and your builder, your relationship, the investors, the developer, builder, whatever, they see that you're doing that, and it just shows them that you're working, you're hustling, you're doing what you can, and that keeps them, wanting to come back and work with you and not go to someone else with the deal. And, and that is an important aspect of, I don't want to take something to a builder that hasn't a preferred agent or specific agent that they work with on everything. I'm in it for the long deal. And so that's really worked out well for me in creating that extra niche within the business.
That relationship is reciprocal too. If you bring somebody a piece of land and then they go buy it without you, then they're done. You're done working with them. Don't do it again. It takes one time of somebody doing that. So you didn't want to work with that person if they do that, and they're not the person you're looking for if they do.
They likely won't be in it long if they don't respect that loyalty. So, now the challenge is sometimes, I've brought dirt to, let's say, Build Nashville, and, they may have heard about it 10 minutes prior from some other agent, and so it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's on the street or somebody emailed it about, and I don't take for granted that builder knows about something that got emailed to me. So if you get an email of somebody saying, hey, we've got to move some stuff, I think it's an opportunity to reach out to those folks and see if they know about it. True?
Yeah, because most people are just like any of us would be. Whoever you got it first from, so you'd feel like loyalty to go with. So
that's right. Yeah, so don't try to become their exclusive agent. It's about who brings the dirt. Would you say? True?
Yeah.
There's enough to go around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with exception of typically big high rises, like Ray Hensler, who did Adelicia, who did 1212, right? Like he had some experience with you all to where like you guys probably have some goodwill going forth for future projects, something like that.
I would hope so, but not because he likes us, but because we were successful and
Exactly.
we achieved his goals.
Absolutely. What are some of the weirdest ways you've gone about finding property?
I mean, the silo deal is one that's just, it was in the paper. Brian sent me the article.
I said, you've got to do this.
Yeah, and then I called.
Like in the damn classifieds, or what'd you see, Brian?
No, it was in the Business Journal. It was
I
like,
think it was the Tennessean.
or the Tennessean, that they got the SP approved to do, but Southeast Venture didn't have the ability to develop the residential piece.
So this was at a time when David and Brent were really super focused and busy in the nations, kind of with White Pines, kind of getting going with those guys early in that relationship. And I remember coming across that article and you guys were like in full swing, and I sent it to him like, man, you need to go after this because this is like right in your wheelhouse. Like you guys are over there now doing it. Just get going. And it sparked a call, which, you know, then they got the ripple effects all the way back around. But yeah, that was
a weird one. That was a huge project.
I mean, go ahead.
Paul, how about you? You mentioned you had to find a house for somebody just to get their house, right? Let me help you move. We want your house. We want your dirt.
Yeah. I mean, it was that was early stages of getting in at Charlotte Park and just trying to create good welfare between myself and the neighborhood. Obviously, there's going to be pushback, you know, and with, you know, old school neighborhoods where people have been there forever. They don't exactly like agents coming in and tearing down homes, regardless of how fantastic they are at the end and how good it is for them. So building some relationships. I even had from referrals because I did help someone find a new home. And then, you know, they know other people in the neighborhood, and they just having the idea of this agent will take care of you. He's not just here to get your signature on a contract and get you out. I can't think of anything. It seems like there's been some crazy deals where I've been able to get land. It's just kind of one of those, like, let's see if this works, you know, like, or just, you know, a simple phone call or whatever. It's just kind of like having the idea, wouldn't it be crazy if, and then it ends up working out, and just taking some chances. And it's been pretty cool, and built some really great relationships where I think a lot of people probably would have not even taken the chance or taken the risk or been too concerned about hearing no to take the chance. So I think that's where you can really put yourself ahead of other people, is by just taking a shot at it, not worrying about, you know, hearing no.
Yeah.
And keep moving. Like if it doesn't work out, go to the next one, and just keep going. Looking back, you can't change anything in the past. I mean, the silo deal was, I was in the driver's seat on it. And like I said, I brought Brian in to help, and I don't look back and think, oh, I could have just done that all myself. I mean, today I've started thinking that, but before today, I hadn't really thought about it. It's a lot of money that Brian got, and I'm not happy about it.
Yeah. He doesn't always earn it, but he always shows up to get it.
It was a bad move.
He's a sleuth, man. He's a sleuth. You mentioned tax records, the old days of printing out tax records. What's that about? How do you use the tax system or other ways to find property, find land?
I haven't done this, but I've heard people use Forewarn so look it up, and then you can use that to get the phone number, and then you can call them, which is a cool, little roundabout way to do it.
Do y'all ever have you done the letter campaigns that we see sometimes investors do? You know, they're doing letter campaigns, farming areas. Any of y'all done that?
I think there was a time years ago that seemed to be more effective. Now it's just, the market's gotten too hot and too competitive, seems like, for that to be super effective.
It seems like everybody's gotten those letters by now. Like every home that had a potential, if there's any square piece of earth that isn't accounted for, somebody's knocking on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done postcards in the past, where I just, if you can't expect everyone to open up an envelope. So I just would do simple postcards, nothing fancy, and that's really what helped me get started was not spending a bunch of money on it. But, I went through the tax record and found all of, filtered down to make sure that I was sending, to properties that were eligible for HPRs. I went and it took hours to do it, but I put in the time to do it to build my mailing list. And then I created pretty simple postcards, and I just hit it every 2 weeks for 2 months. And so they just kept seeing my postcard show up, and they got tired of throwing it away or calling me to tell me to stop sending them.
Yeah.
And and so I would mark them off the list, but I just kept going at it. And it's just you keep showing up in their mailbox. Yeah. And when it's time to make a move, then they are going to remember your name.
Yep. All right. Talking about property acquisition, how much knowledge should you have, or do you need to know in determining what can be built on a lot? How much are you a part of that process, or what knowledge extent would you say you need to have, and how would they go about learning that?
So I know enough to be dangerous on the zoning code stuff. I'll think, oh, this can hold two, because I know that the R with the RS is single family stuff, and R without the S, a lot of times you could do 2 if the square footage of the lot is bigger than the number that's there. But I have people that I trust, so I know enough, and then I would send it to a builder and say, hey, it looks like you can do 2 on this. I'm not the expert. Usually whoever I'm sending it to, it's their decision. So I'm not saying you can do 3 here, and I'm not really sure. So I feel like that, again, is relationships and knowing who knows what they can really do and is confident in that, and then sending it to that builder and saying, looks like you can do 2 on this, am I wrong, or whatever. And sometimes it's like, no, you're wrong because of this or that, or it works. Again, it's just jumping on opportunities and trying to put something together.
It's a great chance to learn, and I think it's a good point, right? Like, know enough to be dangerous, but I choose to be ignorant about schools and crime, because I don't really even want to be influenced of what I know about them to tell somebody, and I'm rather transparent about that.
I learned like on an R10, let's say, and it's 20,000 feet. So then you think, oh, you could maybe do 4 there. Well, if it's just a single lot, you can still do 2, even though it's 20,000 feet. So early on, I remember like finding something like that, sending it and being like, I think you can do 4. And then come to find out, learned maybe you could, but that would take another round and getting the council member to agree and all that stuff. But now I don't make that mistake. So you learn that as you're sending stuff around and somebody tells you what the reasoning for it is.
And I think the builders and developers, they're happy to share because you're bringing land. So like, they're happy to help you understand why that would work or not. What they love, you're bringing them opportunity. That's the name of the game. Would you agree?
Totally.
100%.
Yep. What do you do the analysis, or what sort of analysis have you seen them use as far as if something's gonna build like what they should build, or how calculating profit? Do you get involved in that analysis, and if so, to what extent?
So I would say, from my experience, and maybe Paul and David can speak more to this, most of the guys that I work with like that have their own kind of template that they're comfortable with, their own sort of Excel spreadsheet, some more complicated than others, and it kind of put in some information, spits out something on the bottom, and they're either comfortable or not. I've built some over the years for other less sophisticated clients to kind of show what I think could work. And so it just depends on the client and on the deal, how far that looks. When it comes to the multifamily stuff, a lot of times we'll get in the room early and they'll want us to evaluate the exit, tell us how much this is going to yield and how long it's going to take, right? The 2 important questions. And, that can be a little a little tricky. It's sort of like, the first guy to say the number loses, so we're trying to figure out, what's the number like it needs to be, if it needs to be 30 million and we're getting to 10, then we're done here, but if it's 30 and we're at 29, then maybe we can work a little bit or whatever. So it's helpful just to, again, create that trust and understand where they need to be, and then try and be helpful and get them there if we can, and also tell them they're crazy if we can't.
A lot of times too, in the multifamily stuff, the developers speak price per foot and we speak price point. So they'll want to know right then, what can we sell this for price per foot? And we try and then figure out, well, what do you need to sell it for price per foot? Again, trying to get to that bottom number, because then maybe we do smaller floor plans. Is they're going to yield a higher price per foot? Or we can do, it doesn't, it doesn't just always work like they need to be at a certain number. Then now we have the pieces to the puzzle. We can try and put it together. And we don't want a listing that we can't sell. So we're like constantly saying that to developers, like, we really want this. We really want to do this development, but we don't want to do it if we can't sell it. And you don't want to do it if we can't sell it. So let's try and like work together, figure that out. And if we can't, then you walk away from it, and everybody wins if the deal isn't there.
Excellent point. Thank you both, for sure. For sure. And I think, people have to remember, when you're working with builders, when they give you a price per foot, that doesn't necessarily mean heated and cooled footage. Because when you're building multifamily, you've got hallways and elevators and storage and stairs. Like, it still costs money. Build garages. Garages don't count in the footage, but it still costs money. Covered porches, all the things, right? Rooftop decks, holy balls. Rooftop decks are a nightmare, right? Like, I mean, they leak. TPO roofs are garbage. Like, they're a warranty nightmare, and everybody thinks they're going to gather their junk and go up there and party, and they never use it. So things to just be mindful of as you're getting into the new construction world, of what are some things or pitfalls and trends and those type of things, because you really are or can be an ally with that developer or investor builder. Don't assume. I've seen so many instances where, like, they're still, listen to the 80s rock, and they don't understand, like, bathtubs in the master aren't it, like khaki tile ain't coming back just yet, so they right, Brian? I mean, it's true. Like, so it can be really instrumental, and we don't need to see those same IKEA stainless handles again. We've rolled that bus. So, Paul, how about you, working in smaller deals, as far as like working in that analysis and being an advisor to them? How do you help them in that way? Or
well, it's really just about knowing the comps and trying to not, they do want to know what the exit's going to be 8 months before they're done, or 10 months. And so you're really just, this is where you really add value, is that you can, the comps. I know Charlotte Park like the back of my hand. I can tell you what comps are now, and kind of, well, not right now, but but I, knowing your comps, knowing the neighborhood, knowing where you're looking for land so that you can provide that value. I can kind of, I can run comps on where it is and look at the appreciation, and I feel confident in providing what, a pretty good range of what the exit price is going to be. Of course, you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver and all that, but you want to stay conservative and just try to give them the, best case scenario, also kind of worst case, but really, you just want to aim for the middle and just provide the good numbers.
Yeah. People ask all the time, how much does it cost to build? How much does it cost to build? How do you answer that? Do you have any rules of thumb, or just broad guesses or numbers that you work with on, let's say, nation's HPRs, for example?
A lot of those questions just require more details to get anywhere. I mean, anyone can make up numbers, but like, what's the product like? Are you doing a rooftop deck, or is it have a garage? I mean, are we doing like, quartz countertops? Are we doing marble, or is it tile? Is it, I mean, there's 1,000 ingredients into answering that. So it's sort of like a loaded question. Obviously, we can give them roundabout stuff based on what we have seen. I think it's been a minute since I've talked like that, but like, I'm thinking like a Silo Park kind of cottage single family home, new construction is probably in the $115 a foot vertical land. I'm just, spitballing that a little bit, but, that's how I'd answer that one. When you get into the more custom stuff, I wouldn't really know. But I mean, 115 is probably about as inexpensive as you can go vertical these days, I would imagine.
That's kind of the numbers I'm hearing and seeing. I mean, again, if you were to estimate, Paul, you're shaking your head too, yeah, if you're just estimating vertical costs, like without land, and you just needed a baseline to start with, that's probably going to build you a Honda Accord. So that's what I'm seeing.
I mean, that's a good way to get a feel for if there's a deal there real quick. It's like, okay, the land is this, and whatever, 120 a foot, and 2,300 feet. That spits out this. Take out. You can kind of quickly get there where it was worth sending on to somebody. But if somebody's asking you what it costs to build a foot, then you need to dig in. What are you trying to get at? What do you have? What do you keep asking questions to figure out why they're asking you what it costs to build a foot? Because you're not the person to be answering that question.
Yeah. What are other considerations that agents don't think about that builders have to, so that we have more awareness? I'll kick off with one. Let's say land costs or sewer taps. What are other things that we don't think about? We think build cost and land cost. What else is there?
So some of this stuff I'm just kind of saying because I hear it in these rooms. It's not my expertise, but I hear people talk about stormwater quite a bit these days as a big number and a question mark in a lot of these deals that require some engineering. And it's sort of like you get to a point on a lot of these evaluations, and then that's like a thing where somebody's got to spend a bit more money to peel back the onion another layer. And that's an important one because that could be significant. I guess there's some rules around that in different parts, the urban core neighborhoods related to stormwater and how you got to treat it, and you got to wash all the water and all these things. So I hear that one as being one to think about. And then carry costs is always one that's a little tough to determine because that requires, again, a bunch more digging in and are you raising money? How much, what's the loan? What's the term, so carrying costs can be tricky as well. Those are the two that come to my mind.
Yeah. Again, those aren't really on us. I don't think we shouldn't really be playing in that game. If somebody needs you to tell them all that, then they're probably not.
No, I want people to know some of those terms. I'm glad you brought that up, Brian, and that agents don't just kind of shoot it off the hip and think, oh, this thing should make money because if we build at 1x a foot, they'll say, oh, we build for about 120 a foot. And then you go say, okay, if we buy the land, there's a lot more math to it. And yes, if they're more experienced, they know that. But you should have awareness of those considerations of what even a small builder is doing, that they need to be accounting for carrying costs, stormwater for sure, codes, planning, architecture, design, revisions, all those things. And then commissions.
Yeah, it's not just 6%. Yeah.
Yeah, and it may not be 6%. So it's, if somebody's providing you enough business, they are accustomed to getting a break many times. And so be mindful to that. And like you say, if the project's of certain size and substance, who's paying for marketing, right?
Yeah,
they might assume their last agent paid for staging.
Yeah, there's different things that, like sidewalks, for instance, are something that have come into effect for me where I didn't think of it up front, sending a corner lot to a builder, whatever the pay, either to pay to have it done or whatever the in lieu of fee, it doubles essentially in some cases because you're on a corner now instead of a 60-foot wide road frontage where they don't have to build quite as much. You put it on a corner and it really extends their building cost.
And can explain that a little bit, Paul, for some of those that may not be, what the sidewalk situation is in Davidson County now.
I know that, for instance, I don't even know the number anymore. There's an in lieu of fee that you can pay to get out of having to build it.
I think it's $177 a foot.
Yep. So in some cases, it's a case of moving a telephone pole or going around it or moving a fire hydrant. The cost starts adding up whenever you start bringing sidewalks into play because of the changes in regulations or the whatever it is that's causing the sidewalks to be built. And And sometimes, of course, I don't want to get into the whole discussion of it because half the time the sidewalks just stop at the neighbor's yard. And so that's just a cost. You kind of, one of those things that comes into play when you're, bringing a deal to a builder, whether they're going to build or not, it's going to cost them extra money.
Right. Yeah. It's a thing to be mindful of. It can definitely affect the cost. Some of these deals, 20 grand on a 2 build is a lot of money. I mean, it really can affect the margins and whether it's worth it. What do you hear or see, Paul, of what people, or any of you, what's the minimum number they want to show up for profit margin?
I'm not even sure, Brian, you may know more about that than I do.
I mean, it sort of depends on the client and their, their risk tolerance, I guess, or their mood or the area, or, all the things, right? But like, I've heard for a long time, like 20%, 25%, but I've been seeing that get a little leaner recently just because our market's gotten super competitive. And I think guys are realizing that they're just going to have to do more deals and take a little more risk to kind of, those are sort of the good old days. I've seen some stuff as low as 15, 12, but that's been my experience recently, is that it's gotten a little tighter, and you find one of those 20% deals. You're just like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can back into stuff. If you can figure out what somebody needs to get,
Right.
it's 20% or whatever, and then you can have the conservative, look, we can get out of this at 10%, selling them at these numbers. I feel great about this deal here. That's how you can make your pitch to be their agent. I think that this is a deal where worst case scenario, possibly we're at 10%, but best case we're at 30. And, I think we can hit your 20% margins that you're hoping to hit. And they kind of go do all that math. Your job really is, what can we sell these things for?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we can get excited and price things wrong because you want a listing. And you just have to keep in mind that in the same way that if you bring a builder a deal and then they go around you and buy that piece, you're never going to work with them again. If you tell a builder that you can do something that you can't do, they're not going to work with you again either. So be conservative, be clear that nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can tell what the future is. This is what it can sell for today. And we've seen the market pushing up, but that also can change or stay the same. So it needs to work in today's dollars. They need to understand that today's dollars is what you're pricing something out at. And maybe somebody else is telling them some bigger number. And if it's worth that, then you're going to be happy to list it for that then. But today, this is what it's worth. And so then when the deal maybe isn't worth that number, then they'll either come back to you or they'll go on that ride with you and be happy they took your advice.
Right. Managing expectations, right?
Yeah. And it's easy in those rooms and in those circles, you get going and working on something, and, everyone in that room benefits at higher numbers, right? So like you can kind of get going, everybody, you're chest bumping, high fiving, and then you get home and you're kind of waking up at night going, man, I don't feel good about that. I don't think those things are going to sell for $1 million, or whatever it is. And so I would say, speak up when you feel that something isn't right. I mean, seek out the data or whatever, but we're all industry professionals and out in the field. And if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't, and have the confidence to say something. That's what's really nice about working with David or Paul or others and not doing projects kind of in a vacuum by yourself. It's important, at least for me, to have that other advocates that I can talk to kind of offline and voice some of those concerns or red flags. And, a lot of times I'll bring something up, David will talk me off the ledge or vice versa. And it's really good to get, to have that sounding board and to come back with a, with more kind of vetted advice.
Or build the confidence to come in there and say something that nobody wants to say. It's like, no,
Right.
We need to say it. We need to say it. We don't want this. We're never going to get to tell the story of why we weren't able to sell it. And we're going to look like the reason that it didn't sell or whatever. And then being able to put that out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. All right. We've got like 2 minutes left here. What would be, for those listening, what would be your just general piece of advice from what we've covered? Somebody wants to work with developers. What either should they know or be scared of or be aware of in doing this? Just the last parting thought.
So I'll start off. I think we've been hearing a lot consistently in this discussion about relationships, and it's something that we hear a lot about in general real estate, and so I think that's just the common thread. And, I would say be patient, it just takes, relationships take time, and that's what this business is. And it's even more so to me in the developer world, that those trusted relationships. So that would be the two highlights for me.
Excellent. David or Paul?
I'd say kind of along the same lines with Brian is creating relationships. I built a relationship, like 2 or 3 builders before I ever really looked into presenting a lot. I mean, who am I going to present it to if I don't have anyone so my first step would be to get out and create some relationships with some builders. If I figure out if you're going to want to work with them or not, that's why I said at the beginning to get out and walk some of their job sites, see what their work is like too. You want to make sure that you're creating a relationship with someone that you do want to work with. My goal was I kind of had a bucket list. I wanted to sell a home built by Build Nashville. And it took a long time for me to do it. I sold Amy, I sold her daughter a house in Charlotte Park 3 years ago, I guess. And they ended up using it for an office. And eventually they've now torn it down. They're almost done being built. I get to sell 2 of them. I walked through enough job sites or buildings to know that I wanted to work with them. So that's really key, to get out and just put your, get out there and work and see what you want to do, and then build those relationships, and then you can really get started.
True. Excellent. David?
Yeah, I think it's just like, get out there, keep going, don't look back, take people's stuff, and build those relationships with them and decide if you want to work with them based on that. But don't be afraid to take somebody something. That's how you're going to learn. And just do something. Do something.
Get out there and show up.
Yeah,
right? Show up. Don't just talk about you want to work with builders, right? People say those things, and it's like, what does that really mean? Like, if you want to, then go get involved. And I've done new construction classes, so you can familiarize yourself with what's the difference between a floor joist and a truss and a lentil and all the things. Like, you should know basic things about new construction if you're going to work with these folks. But you only need to know so much. The thing is the value of bringing land. And I would pick an area first. So don't just say, I want to work with builders. Well, there's builders that focus on different areas. So preferably one in which there's a good start just in building a real estate business. Probably the one you live in is a good way to start if you're even unsure of where to start there. So then you figure out, just drive the streets and see who's got signs in the yard, or where there's not a sign, but you see a temporary electric pole. Okay, somewhere on the job site, there is a building permit. Take a picture of it. Take that LLC and put it in the tax record and see what else they're building under that name. That's all you need to know to start. Like, just start there, folks, right? Like, so.
Understanding pricing is so huge. I mean, that's where you can really add value. In our business, there's a bunch of yes men and women that can say yes to any project, but really understanding why something needs to be priced, the way it needs to be priced, and what its competition is. That's where you're adding value to these builders, because that's what they're not seeing. They're just in their vacuum of building what they're building, and they don't know maybe whatever. They've seen the pictures of the house down the street, but if you've walked those things and you understand, like Paul, you understand Charlotte Park so well, you understand why something needs to be and what needs to be in that house for it to hit the price points. That's where you can really add value to these builders, and then you're irreplaceable.
Yeah, and I would say
it is very localized like that. You really need to know your product and your comps. It's not just like, oh, I'll sell new construction in Oak Hill, and then I'm going to pop over to the Nations and work with them. Like, even though White Pines builds in both of those areas, totally different animals, right?
Yeah, and pricing one house to sell is different than pricing 4 houses to sell, is different than pricing 60 units to sell. It's easy to go cherry picking for the right answer. Oh, well, there's this one unit at 505 that traded at $1,200 a foot. Let's underwrite this whole 300 unit project at $1,200 a foot. It's like, well, that's one sale, right? We've got to get to 300, and so there's a path to do that and a way to get there, but it's you know, like, I guess I'm just underscoring David's point, like
That's the path to
and,
never
yeah,
get paid, is
pricing.
to do that.
Right.
Right. I mean, you're never going to get paid. It can be exciting, but you're never going to get paid.
Yeah. And I think we talked a little bit about it, but probably the biggest, the downfalls of working with new construction, maybe we didn't hit that. What are your quick ones? Like, this is just the true and ugly. You're not going to get paid quickly. What else?
Yeah, just the timing. I mean, it requires a lot of stamina, both time-wise and financially. A lot of times, you know, to kind of get out there and market one of these things for a long time. And then, you know, because of the time, it's just riddled with a ton of risk, you know, market turns or something happens, election, COVID, whatever. And like, now this isn't working and I've spent the last 8 or 9 months focused on it and it's gone, you know, those would be the pitfalls as I see them.
It also takes a lot of communication. It's different than your buyer who shows up and then they want to go buy a house and they look on the weekends and they find it and then they're done. And then you're keeping up with them by sending them a pumpkin pie once a year. It every week you're checking in. This is this person's job too. And so they want updates when they wake up in the morning. This is what they're thinking about. How are we going to get this sold? What are you doing to make it happen? And so you got to be on that. And that is a thing that I think it can look like, oh, it's a bunch of closings and that's really exciting. But you have to be constantly tweaking it, updating it, messing with MLS, just have a plan.
You're going to earn your money. This is not, for those that I sometimes hear or think like this might be an easier way, it is not. Under any condition.
Yeah, these people are putting a lot of money at risk, and they have millions of dollars out with this project's success on the line, and you have to be there for them, good and bad. I mean, it's not, you know, they're wired differently than most people. They're taking risk, and so you have to be able to take on whatever comes with that, good and bad.
Yep. Any other questions, parting thoughts? I saw Beth Hooker, you added to the chat list to find builders, look at neighborhoods in the area and what the teardown house is sold for the builder purchased, and then meet that builder. It's another good way.
One of the things, may I say this?
Yes, please.
One of the ways I got going in Belmead Highlands was I had a house that somebody wanted to sell that the land value, of course, is worth more than the house. So what I did is I started looking in Belmead and Belmead Highlands at everything that sold in the past 3 years that was a brand new home. I made a list of what those builders paid for those lots. I picked the ones that paid the most and went to the seller and said, let me bid this out. So I started bidding out to builders. And by doing that, I met builders I've now worked with for years. I even had a Frederick Clark agent call me and go, how did you get that for that lot, for that house, that teardown house? And I went, I bid it out. I took the highest bid from my seller. And they said, that's genius. Will you do my house? I'm like, you're an agent. I don't care. Just do it. I don't want to mess with it. So, and I won't say who this is, but it's a pretty well-known Frederick Clark agent. And ever since then, I've had people call and say, hey, can you get me this price for my teardown for my house? And now I'm doing it over off of Nolensville Road in some areas. And it's all working from the seller, trying to get the seller the best price I can get them for their lots. And in that process, I've also weeded out a couple builders that I won't sell their houses, because I have had people tell me what they don't do after they've purchased the home, what they don't come back and repair, and I won't represent them. So yeah. I'm picky about it. And I also do in this process, since I start out working for the seller, I do pre-listing agreements. So when I have the builder, I do a 3-year pre-listing agreement that by this particular time, if they're a new builder, if they know me, I have one I don't do that with anymore, but they respect me for that. And they go, all right, that's good. I know you'll do a good job for me because you're a professional.
Sure. Well, I like the point of that too, in that of marketing things off market. So if you do get land, this is not the time to likely take it to the MLS. Okay, so that is, you take those things personally, not through a mass email, to your select people. We didn't cover that. I'm glad that that led to that. So thank you, Beth. Andrea Frandon, you asked, how long is a stick? Am I missing something? Is there a question? I didn't want that to be missed, but what? How long is a stick? Is this a riddle?
No, it was just during the question about like when a builder says like how much per square foot to build, and that was like, well, let's talk about the finishes. Let's talk about what your end game is.
I see what you're saying. Okay,
what
that's
your
a good point.
amenities are. It's like, how long is a stick? I mean, it could be anything. So yeah.
I like the guy at Lowe's that told me anytime somebody comes in, they say, I need a light bulb. What size is it? It's a standard size. He goes, I just reach down and pick the first one and hand it to him.
Oh my God.
There is no standard. All right, well, let's wrap there. It's 11:39. We went over as I typically do. Give a huge hand to these folks. Thank you all very, very much. Beautiful information. And y'all have a fantastic, fantastic day. This will be recorded. It'll be online. We'll see you tomorrow for Thrive, and Wednesday or Thursday for all the stuff that's in the Ed calendar. Thank you all.
Thanks, Teddy.
Appreciate y'all very much.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye.